Hey young friends, Dr. Bill here. I'm back with another of the lessons in our series of big names in the Bible. Last week we took a look at King Solomon, and we discovered then that Solomon, after he became king, decided that the one thing he most wanted from God was wisdom, the ability to know how to rule his people well, to know what was truly important. God answered Solomon and gave him that wonderful gift. And as a result, one of the things Solomon is most well known for is his wisdom, his ability to sort out and understand what matters in life and what's important in living well. Well, today in our lesson, we're taking a look at the other thing Solomon was most well known for, and that was the building of the first temple in the city of Jerusalem. Now, as the book of 1 Kings tells us, David had wanted to build a temple, but God said, no, that's going to be Solomon's job. And so after Solomon came to the throne, he decided to build a temple. Now, up until that time, people in Israel worshiped God at different places all across the land. There was no one central location for all of the people to gather in order to worship on special days and during their holy seasons. So, Solomon decided that the time had come to build that temple, that place of worship, that one central place where all of Israel could gather to worship God. And so several chapters in 1 Kings describes all of the work that Solomon put in making the plans, gathering the temple, gathering the materials, and then finally constructing the temple and then dedicating it to the service of God. Now, that's a real summary of what you find in those chapters in the book of 1 Kings. Let me now tell you what I think are the lessons from this portion of Solomon's life. First, it's this. Whenever you and I attempt something good or something great, the chances are we're going to need some help. The writer of 1 Kings says that one of Solomon's good friends was a man named Hiram. He was the king of Tyre, a kingdom that was located north of Israel. Solomon and Hiram apparently had a very good relationship. And so Solomon floated the idea, saying, you know, my dad, David, he wanted to build the temple, but he couldn't do it. And I'm thinking that maybe this is the time for me to take on that task. And Hiram jumped in with both feet and said, yes, you should do this. And Hiram even said this to Solomon. He said, you know, my country is known for the quality of its timber, its wood. If you decide to do this thing, I will be happy to supply the wood that you will need for the construction of the temple. So Hiram offered Solomon necessary encouragement. And then as well, he offered tangible help. He said, this is what I can do for you to help you get this project off the ground. The truth is, very few of us do stuff all by ourselves. Very few of us do stuff that matters or makes a difference all on our own. Somewhere along the line, we have someone who helps us. Maybe they're like Hiram and they provide encouragement, or maybe they provide us the materials that we need to fulfill our dreams. The truth is, we do very few things all by ourselves. And that was true for Solomon, and it's true for us. Here's a second lesson. One of the most important tasks in building the temple was providing the vessels and the instruments within the temple itself that would be used during worship. I'm talking about what would be the equivalent for us of candlesticks or Lord's Supper plates, things like that. Well, the temple was a huge complex, and there was all kinds of stuff that needed to go into that temple so that the people could worship God as God had instructed them to do. Well, most of those instruments needed to be made of bronze, a metal. Solomon looked around, and there was no one in Israel who was skilled at making or crafting things from bronze. But he found a craftsman, another man named Hiram, not the king, but a craftsman named Hiram who was skilled in creating bronze and using bronze to craft and make beautiful things. And so Solomon enlisted and employed Hiram to do exactly that. In other words, Solomon needed a specialist to do certain things. Now the lesson here is that obviously Hiram was very gifted in what he could do. Solomon was not gifted in working in bronze, nor was anyone else among the Hebrew people. He needed the contributions that Hiram could make in terms of his gifts. Now the interesting thing, I think, for all of us is to remember that we are gifted. Not all of us can do the same things. Some of us are very good at this, while others are good at something else over here. Our gifts are unique to us. And the most important thing that we can do in life is to discover those gifts, develop them, keep on growing with them, and then put them to use, hopefully in the Lord's service. The Apostle Paul, when he wrote to the church at Corinth, stressed that they had gifts, and the most important thing they could do was find the correct and best way to employ those gifts. It's a wise person who knows when he or she needs someone with a particular skill set. And it's even better when the person who has those skills and those gifts can say, I am ready to do whatever is necessary. Important for all of us to find and discover our gifts. And then finally, here's the last lesson. When the temple was finally completed, it was a big day for the Hebrew people. And Solomon convened everybody there in Jerusalem so they could have this big dedication service, this big worship service to say, this is the temple we have made for God. And Solomon, on that occasion, spoke to the people and said, hey, look, this temple is incredible. You all have done fabulous work. God is honored by this labor, by all of your investment, and that is really terrific. But Solomon said this at the very end. He said, as wonderful as this building is, I want to remind you that God doesn't live in a building. God is way, way, way bigger than any building. There's no building any of us can construct that can contain or hold God. It is important for sure for us to have special places like the temple or like our church where we gather to worship and we hope we can meet God here. But that doesn't mean that God is confined within this space. This church, as wonderful as it is, can't hold God. God is way, way, way bigger than that. And that's a lesson the Hebrew people would have to learn time and again in their history. And Solomon was the first to articulate or to tell the people exactly that. To say, no matter how wonderful a house you build, no matter how big you build it, God is more wonderful and bigger still. Well, that will do it for today. I certainly hope that you've enjoyed this lesson. I look forward to meeting with you again next week. And as always, I hope that the rest of the week just goes wonderfully well for you. And I wish you God's every best blessing. Take care. Bye-bye.